But what did you want to say?
Uh, Um, yeah, so the main thing is, don't put a lot of faith in like studies and stuff. Like fine, you can look at a study for some reference, but I mean, like there's study. First of all, there's studies for everything. I mean, you get study for X, and then you get study for the opposite of that.
Yeah, that's
So
why
I
you
mean,
that's why you look at the methodology. You can also look at where it's been cited. There's plenty of things. You can look at the authors. You can look at sometimes the funding, depending on the study. They don't all say it, but you can look at all of these things to determine the validity of a study. It's not just that it's a fucking study. You have to actually look at the study to see if it's legit or not.
yeah, that's one thing you have to look at the study. But I mean, I just don't put a lot of faith in that for soft sciences. I mean, my main thing is you had like studies that said that okay, cigarettes are not really that expensive. Sorry, not really that harmful. And I mean, you had studies that said okay, sugar should be part of your diet. You know, a small amount of sugar.
Sugar
It's
should be
there in the
part of your
food
diet,
pyramid also.
and
So
that
yeah,
that's
okay.
just part of the human diet. But either way, you can probably look back at those studies and find flaws in the methodology. Again, I haven't doing this. I haven't done this, right? But I would assume that there are flaws in the methodology that make it a non-repeatable study. And that is a key part of a study being valid, is that it can be repeatable.
Yeah, but I mean, in soft sciences, you can't really repeat the study because like it's different people and stuff like that, right? So
No, that's the point. Soft sciences, yes, the ones with tiny sample sizes, those are usually non-repeatable and not very valid. But when you have a sample size of, say, 2,000 people, the general trends that you see do tend to repeat across studies when other people use the exact same procedure.
I don't know. So I mean, you have studies that say that okay, being soft on crime is better, but from what I can observe in San Francisco and places like that, I mean, it's not working. So even if the study says, and even if for 2,000 people they have proved or whatever that okay, you go soft on crime, you lessen the punishments, and you increase rehabilitation. So I mean,
Again,
okay,
I
you
am
might
not
be
saying,
helping
I'm
more
not saying
people.
that, no, no, no. I am not saying that bail should be taken away. I am also not saying that the sentences should be shorter. I'm saying that during those sentences, rehabilitation needs to take place or else nothing happens. And if anything, it actually increases recidivism if someone actually goes to jail. Jail creates criminals. Prisons create criminals. Rehabilitation within those prisons is what actually stops crime.
I guess, yeah, I can, you can say agree with that or whatever, but yeah, my main thing is don't put a lot of faith in like studies for soft sciences. I mean, you know, I just see a lot of people do this, that instead of thinking about it, I mean, you obviously have thought about it, but still, I mean, don't put a lot of faith in studies.
I think
I
about
mean,
it,
you
and
can
you know
look.
what else I do? I use the data available. You can look, right? Obviously, you can't have a lab test with social sciences. I will fully admit that, and that I've never said that you can have something like that. But what you can have is you can see trends in how people act. You can see trends in the effects of a program, for example. Just like how you can see trends in fucking. You can see trends in people when gay marriage is legalized drastically increase support for gay marriage, right? This is just things that you can observe and see. You can see the trends. And the same thing applies for rehabilitation, for example. You can see that when there is rehabilitation present, that the recidivism rates greatly lower.
I guess I'm fine with rehabilitation. I mean, you have more focus on rehabilitation. I can buy that. Okay, that would
No, but
work.
what I'm
But
trying to illustrate, is that these studies show trends, not just for rehabilitation, right? For anything in social sciences. When the study is done well, studies show trends. And these trends are not just subject to the one little group that is studied. That's why I say that studies need to be repeatable for them to be valid. But when they are repeatable, they can be applied across a vast majority of people, and they are
Um,
accurate.
so so about the pedophilia. So okay, about the pedophilia thing. So see, um, with your approach, you will help more people. I am 100% confident in that. That there are people who can be treated, and they will be treated if you destigmatize or if you lessen the stigma or whatever you might want to call it. That uh, you don't treat them as an outcast or whatever. That's destigmatizing mainly. But okay, you help a small minority of people. But what I feel it will do is basically, I'll not say embolden, but it will sort of, I mean, it will result in more pedophiles. It will
What
result in
makes you say
people
that?
being more open about it. It will result in, if people are more open about it, then people will start to accept it. I mean, that's how it goes.
So wait, I have a core question to ask you, just so that I can understand where you're coming from on this whole issue. Do you think
Yeah.
that people choose to be pedophiles, or that they have these feelings without wanting to have these feelings, I guess you'd say?
So, so yeah, I can I'll answer that in a rephrased way. So I am not saying people choose to be pedophiles, but what I am saying is people can choose to suppress that urge.
Right, right. So people can choose to suppress that urge. You know what else people can choose to
Yeah.
suppress? The urge to commit suicide. You know what works better? Treatment.
So
Treatment
you
will
you
always have better results than a lack of treatment. Just
so
because we
that's the
have just because we have therapy, for example, for people with depression, does not mean that we have more people with depression now. No, it just means that people who do have depression are able to get treated for that.
I mean, it has lessened the stigma around depression. So you do have people being more open about it.
That's not a bad
And
thing. That means they get treatment.
yeah, when you have people trying not to really suppress it, people say that, okay, it's a healthy part of a grieving process or, of things going wrong.
I have a grieving
And
process. Yes, it's healthy to be sad if you're grieving. Yeah, that's just
yeah,
that has nothing
but
to do
it
with the
has created,
destigmatization.
but it has increased the number of people who say that they are depressed, right? Earlier, people would say, no, no, I'm not really depressed or anything
You want
like
to know
that.
why?
But
Would you like
now,
to know why?
yeah,
Because there
because
was a stigma
there
around
was
it.
stigma. Yeah,
People couldn't say it and thus couldn't get treatment.
yeah. See, so I am for the stigma. I mean, I'm
You're for
not for
people not getting
depression, but
treatment.
definitely
Just say it that way.
not for
You're for
depression.
people not getting treatment.
Yes, I am okay with people. I'm okay with some people not getting treatment if it means that there are less people who openly say that they are pedophiles, and there
Why
are,
does it matter if they say it?
and because then people will start to accept that as a normal thing.
No, people will still say it's bad to act on that. Does it really matter? So here's the question. Does it really matter if someone thinks it and never acts on it? Is it really
No,
that
I
big of a
don't.
societal issue? It's not, right?
I mean, in isolation, it's not for one person. I mean, if you just look at one person, it's not. But for an overall picture, I mean, if if people are more open about this, then there will be people who will accept that okay, this is something natural and etc. etc. So we
That
should be
doesn't mean that
more
people will
accepting
accept
or
that the
open or
acting
whatever.
on it. That doesn't mean that people would accept that acting on it is okay.
It
Just
won't be
people
tomorrow.
accepting
Like
that having these feelings is just something that happens. Yeah, that's fine because that's the reality of the situation. No one is
yeah,
saying that people should accept that pedophiles act on their wills, right? That's not what any of this is about. This is about pedophiles having the ability to go to a therapist, for example, and talk about this and develop strategies and also medication and things like that to reduce their likelihood of actually acting on these actions. And when you have
I
stigma
mean,
surrounding anything like this, that just simply does not happen at the degree that it needs to be happening.
so see, I mean, you reduce the stigma for depression. I'm okay with that. I'm cool with that. But now Canada has a thing where they are pushing medically assisted suicide to depress people because depression is normal and it's a part of life. So they are pushing this thing because it's normal. So it works in a people call it the slippery slope fallacy, but in maybe half of the cases, it's not actually a fallacy. It actually works that way. That when
In half the
um,
cases, I'm going to need some data on that. I know you hate studies, but
I
I'm going to
mean
need some
this.
data for half of these slippery slope fallacies come true.
I mean, I'll not say half, but a lot of slippery slope fallacies obviously come true. I mean, in Canada, it is obviously true, maybe not everywhere else. Maybe it will be for everyone everywhere else in some while. So I'm not saying that Canada is killing, depressed people, but there have been many cases where, I mean, people, they don't have a job or something like that, and they don't have money for their healthcare and stuff like that. And also for depression, they don't
Are
have a
you saying
job
that
and they
there's
don't have
many
money to
cases
get
where people
treatment.
with depression have been killed or
Offered,
been assisted in suicide?
yes,
You are
yes, they
incorrect
have been
because that
offered.
nope, the law does not apply to people with mental illness until March 1st of 2023. You are just straight up incorrect.
Yeah, it will be applied, but there are cases where it's more of a combination of depression and some small medical issue, and then they
It's usually
have
not a
been
small
offered
medical
the
issue.
maid.
It's
Hmm,
usually not a
okay,
small medical issue.
I'll have to check on that, but I mean in March anyways, it's accepted by a lot of people that okay, even if this
Do
happens,
you,
it's
do you
okay, it's
understand how
fine.
much pushback there is? Do you understand how much of a conversation this is?
Yeah,
It's
but I
not
mean
like something
there's
that's
money.
just that people are just sitting back and accepting.
They are sitting back and accepting. I mean, there is pushback, but there is people are not on the streets, right, about this thing. It's just
There's
it
pushback that is
probably happens
changing the
and people will
policies.
just.
The policy is becoming more and more strict as the time comes closer that it's actually going to be enacted. You do realize that, right?
I'm not that optimistic. Maybe, but I mean the Overton window has shifted, right? I mean, just the fact that we are having this conversation, that is it okay to for depressed people to kill themselves or to help them kill themselves. We are just having this conversation. This is
Either
proving
way,
that
hold up,
the
hold up.
slippery slope
Either
thing,
way, how does this relate to pedophiles? How
because
does
it's
how does
about the
medically
slippery
assisted
slope.
suicide? What do you?
It's
So what are you worried about? People who have pedophilic thoughts being offered assisted suicide?
no, what I'm worried about and what I think will happen is that people will be more open about seeking treatment. That which is good for those people. Those people will get treated. 20% of the people will probably be helped. They will be positively impacted by it. But for 70% or whatever cases that are untreatable, the urge just can't go
That
away.
are
And
untreatable. Can I see where you got that stat? I'm not saying that every
so
pedophile can be treated, but can I see where you got that stat for 70%? Because I don't think that that's accurate. There's very few things that are
I
in the
mean I don't
70%.
I mean it's just a reference from the crime thing. I mean, so right
So it's a stat that
now,
you pulled out of
a
your
repeat
ass?
offender. Yeah, basically
Okay,
by
so we're
comparing
not
it
going
with
to
the
be pulling
crime.
stats out of our ass. So we're just going to take away all the stats from this conversation now. So we're going to talk about how people who receive treatment this is applicable to quite literally anything. People who really receive treatment for an illness or a disease, or for example, urges that they may have, which is a form of mental illness, tend to have way better results uh, in terms of their how that illness affects them than people who do not receive treatment. That is as simple as it is, right? Allowing people to receive treatments means we have less active pedophiles. Yes, maybe the numbers will go up for the amount of people who say that they have the thoughts, but that's just because they're actually coming out and saying it for the first time in their lives. Okay? What matters is what is being acted on, and if treatment reduces the amount of people who are acting on it, then you would thus have less pedophiles that are active pedophiles. And I think that's a good thing. Would you agree with that?
I think what the end result will be is you will have a lot of people helped, but you will also have a lot of more pedophiles that act on their urges because it's more socially acceptable, and therefore they can say that, okay, I will seek treatment now, etc., etc., etc. Whereas before, I mean, so that's the thing. I mean,
Well, what
if
we're
you
talking
believe that
about is
harsh
making it
punishments
no, no,
work,
no. What we're talking about is making it socially acceptable to seek treatment, not to act on it. No one is saying that it
it
should be
will result
socially acceptable to act on it.
it will result in it being socially acceptable to act on it. I mean, it's
Do you
not
have
in
anything?
isolation,
Do
right?
you have anything that supports that? Is it more
It's
socially
literally,
acceptable to act on people's suicidal ideations today in America than it was 20 years ago? No, it is still
I
fucked up
mean,
and bad.
I mean, if you go to, let's say, Dubai or Saudi Arabia, and you are, let's say, you are gay or whatever, or so I mean, it's not at all acceptable. It's completely unacceptable. Like they might kill you or something like that. It's that unacceptable.
Yes.
So I mean, and if in some Western countries, it's completely acceptable. So I mean, it's a thing, right? If you don't have any punishment for it, then it's or if you try to
You do realize that
reduce
there's
the stigma
still
around
gay
it,
people in countries where being gay is illegal. That doesn't reduce the incidence of people being gay. You do realize that, right?
it does result in people suppressing that.
Suppressing it, but they're still gay. It's not like it's a bad action to act on your homosexuality. Everyone can agree that
Yeah,
it's a
yeah,
bad action to act on your pedophilia.
yeah. Many people might not agree that it's a bad thing to act on your pedophilia.
Do you have any
That's the
evidence of
thing.
people thinking that acting on pedophilia, other than pedophiles, do you have any evidence that these people are saying that this is good? That any group of people, other than pedophiles, are saying that acting on it is good?
I mean, I mean, there are people who take these sorts of positions. I mean, there are people who will
Who?
take
Show
this
me.
position.
Show me. Show me who.
I mean,
I'm giving you such an
there's not.
easy chance to prove your point, and you cannot because it doesn't fucking exist, bro. This is you. You refuse to believe in studies, and then you pull stats out of your ass that when I ask where they come from, you don't have a source. Okay, they're literally just pulled out of your ass. So you act like you're using big smart words when in reality you do not have anything to back your points. While I'm sitting here with everything backing my point.
I mean, there are people who take these positions. I mean, I don't have to give a specific example. There are people in every case who take these sorts of positions. I mean, I don't have to give an example of one person to, or if you want to wait, I'll give you an example of one person. I mean,
No, I said give me an example of a group of people, right? Because one person is one person. One person doesn't matter. Like you said yourself, one person doesn't matter. What matters is the society as a whole. So give me a group that is representative of any society, right? And show me that they support pedophilia. Actions on pedophilia.
I mean, there's gonna be people. That's what I'm saying. There's gonna be people who are gonna push
There's so
for that.
so
Okay,
no no
it's
no. So what you're
natural,
saying,
and you.
what you're telling me is that helping what you call the minority of pedophiles, even though you have no actual data backing that, is a bad thing because a very small minority of people, of the general people, might think it's okay to act on it. Is that what you're saying?
And it will result in the Overton window shifting in that direction.
The
Like
overturned window of
like
treatment, yeah, sure, that's good.
of acting on it too, not just treatment. That is how it works. See, I mean, you destigmatize divorce. There is a lot more divorce. Fine,
You
there's more divorce.
destigmatize
I'm not
divorce.
making a moral.
No.
I'm
It
not making
wasn't
a moral
even.
judgment
No,
on it.
no. Wait a second. Let's look at divorce for example, right? Because I've written so many fucking essays on divorce and the divorce rates and what actually causes them. So first, we can talk about making it legal to have no fault divorce. That is the biggest driver in divorce rates today. Okay, is the fact that you can leave a relationship because you don't love someone, which again I don't think is an inherently bad thing, and it has nothing to do with making divorce okay because it was still stigmatized and the rates were still very high before modern day America, I guess you could say, right? So
Uh,
the
uh, just one interruption. So, I mean, it's not as stigmatized as in, let's say, India or something. Like I live in India, so divorce is very much stigmatized here. I mean, if you get divorced, then you are sort of
Do you happen to know
like a
your
bad
rates
person.
of unhappy marriages or domestic violence?
It's probably higher. Yeah,
Yeah.
sure.
So which do you think is better, divorces or domestic violence?
So that's the thing. I'm not making a moral judgment on
No,
divorce
no, no,
or
no, no,
or
no,
if
no. This is
divorce. I'm just
important.
saying that in raw
Wait,
numbers, there
wait.
will be more divorces, right?
So which is better, more divorces or more domestic violence? Just simple question.
Mm, I don't know actually. I don't know which
You
is
don't
better, honestly
you
speaking,
you cannot
on a
say that
broad scale.
domestic violence is worse than divorce.
I mean, in most cases, it's not really violence, but it's more like an abusive relationship and uh, stuff like that.
Look, I don't know the stats specifically on India, and I'll fully admit that, but I know in the United States, actual violence is that happens in relationships, and it happens less than it did before we had high divorce rates. So I would
Mm.
assume that you guys also have pretty fucking high domestic violence rates. So still, you should be able to answer the question of which is better, domestic violence or divorce, or which is worse.
Mm, I guess I'll say divorce, man. I mean,
Divorce is worse than
let's
domestic
be honest.
violence.
No, no, no. Divorce is better than
Divorce is
domestic
better.
violence.
Okay, good. So what this can be related to is which is better, people acting on their pedophilia or people getting treatment.
So, I mean, more people acting on the pedophilia is worse than people getting treatment. I mean,
So
for
if
sure.
people get treatment, there is less pedophilia. Pedophilia is the domestic violence in this case. Just so you're aware. So when there is more treatment, there is less pedophilia. It's the same exact relationship we have with divorce and domestic violence.
I mean, that's the thing. When you have more, so my point is that when you have more treatment and when you have more destigmatization, there will be less pedophilia from the 20 or 30 or whatever percent people, 20 to 30 in my mind, uh, who will do, who will be treated, who will, move on or whatever. But for the 70% of the cases, it will just make it more socially acceptable for them to let's say that they will say, okay, I quote unquote fucked up or whatever.
Do you
It
think in the
won't be
United
a
States
thing that
today it's more acceptable to commit domestic violence than in the United States 50 years ago?
mm,
I know you don't live here, but
no,
take your best guess.
no,
It's
no,
not
no,
more
it's
acceptable.
definitely not. Definitely
Right.
not. Yeah.
And you know what else has happened? The quote unquote treatment for domestic violence of divorce. The treatment has not increased the acceptability of the horrible action. The action is still
So
horrible.
so
The action is inherently
is it
always horrible.
I mean, you are using the wrong analogy. Is it more socially acceptable to get a divorce? Is the correct analogy?
No, the divorce is the treatment. The
Yeah,
divorce
divorce is the
is the
treatment, right?
treatment.
We are talking about treatment. We are talking about the treatment.
No, you are making the claim that if people get treatment, more people will think it's okay to act on pedophilia. So what I'm showing you through the domestic violence case is that domestic violence is not deemed more okay than it used to be. It's actually deemed less okay than it used to be. That would be the same in this analogy as the pedophilic actions being deemed the same or less okay than previously.
I mean, I feel you are using the wrong analogy. You have to use the analogy of divorce. We are getting
I
too
am
meta
using the
about it.
analogy of divorce. Divorce is not the inherently bad thing in comparison to what else happens, right? So you knowing about pedophiles existing in society, you don't like. Okay, that is very clear, right? You don't like to know that pedophiles exist in society. You don't want them to be able to talk about it. That is the equivalent of saying people should not be able to get divorced because you don't want them to get divorced. You don't like that. Now,
Okay.
divorce
Yeah,
is still
it's
the
more clear.
treatment, right? Divorce is the treatment for the horrible action of domestic
Uh,
violence.
No, I mean, you are getting it wrong. So, in this case, when you're talking about divorce, okay, so you have to sort of, you are flipping the analogy actually. When you talk about treatment for divorce, so quote unquote treatment for divorce is domestic violence, right? I mean, quote unquote
Mm,
treatment. So,
treatment for divorce? No, domestic violence is the cause for divorce.
no,
In the
what I'm
analogy,
saying is, if
domestic
you want to
violence,
lessen, if you want to, if you want to lessen divorce, you automatically have to accept more domestic violence. That is what I'm saying. If you want to keep divorce rate low, artificially low, you have to, keep up shitty marriages, and domestic violence is a part of that.
yeah, but
So
what
if you
we're
want,
talking about is increasing the treatment for something. We're not
yeah,
talking
and we are
about
talking
keeping
about
something low.
decreasing divorce. So see, let's not get too meta about it. I feel you are using the flipped analogy instead of talking about divorce, you are talking about domestic violence. Uh, like you have to flip the analogy.
They
Anyways,
are both half
what
of
my
the
point
analogy.
is,
Oh my god, bro. Do you have an
oh,
inability
see,
to recognize analogies just like you have an inability to recognize when there's a valid study? Like,
we are
honestly, at
getting
this
too
point, it
meta
seems
about
like
it.
you lack the critical thinking skills necessary to be having this conversation. Because, first of all, you struggled to say that domestic violence is worse than divorce. Right? That took you a while to say, which indicates something to me. But,
It's
second of
bad
all,
for the individual. Look. These are new things. I mean, divorce being so normalized, you haven't really thought about it. Like for thousands of years, we have had like single marriage, one marriage, one guy, one woman. You don't really marry, two or three times. So this has been the case for thousands of years. So I mean, you can't just,
you know what
throw
else
that
we've had
away.
for
That,
thousands of
okay.
years? You know what else we've had? Women being abused and raped and killed by their partners. You know what we have less now? That.
Yeah, but it's a thing of thousands of years. I mean, there
So
is probably an evolutionary reason
which
for it,
carries
right?
actual harm? Which carries actual measurable harm? Divorce or domestic violence?
You haven't measured the harm of divorce. You haven't. It's not very easy to measure
What
the
harm does
societal
divorce
impact that
have
it
to
will
the
have.
people involved? What harm does it have to the people involved?
So it has a negative impact on the entire society as a whole. I mean, it's not about just the individual people.
Really? Because
I'm very happy.
if you want less kids, right, being falling victim to pedophiles, I would assume it does have to do with these two individuals, right?
Um, wait, what?
You want less kids being pedophiles, it has to do with the pedophile and what treatment they get. That it is an individual level.
And also about the how ready or how willing or um, how okay the pedophile is willing to act on his urges, and that is dictated by what is the punishment for it.
No
If
one's
there's
saying
a
that there
reward
shouldn't
for
be a
it,
punishment for it. No one is saying that it's suddenly legal and there's no punishment. No one is saying
I
that.
mean, if it's socially, I mean, see, that's the thing. I'm not sure why you're not getting. If you are reducing the stigma around it, there will be
You're
people
reducing the
who will feel
stigma
that it's
around
not a big deal.
accessing treatment. Only that.
And that will
Around.
result, and that will result in there being less stigma around the whole thing. I mean, I'm not really sure about the
Do
drug
we as
thing.
no, no, no.
So
We're gonna
just
go back
correct
to the
me.
no. We're going back to the suicide example so that you can actually understand this. Do you think that we as a society think that depression is good? Yes or no?
Depression is a normal part of life. I mean, if you are
Is it
depressed, then that
good?
means you are doing something very wrong.
Is it good? Yes or no?
So when you
It's a
talk
yes
about
or no
quote unquote,
question.
no, wait. I'll answer that yes or no question, but let me give my thoughts about this question first. So when you talk about quote unquote good, I mean it's necessary for our survival. Otherwise, we won't have depression. It's definitely necessary for our survival. If you are depressed, see, if you are depressed, then that means you are doing something very, very wrong in your life, and you need to look at your life and change it.
That's not how
It's
depression works,
not.
buddy. You have a core misunderstanding of
Yeah.
mental illness, but we can move past that. Do you think
Yeah,
depression
yeah.
is good?
I'm not talking about a person with chemical imbalance,
That
who
is what
just is
the
depressed
mental illness
because
of depression is. I am talking about
that's
mental
in twenty
illness.
percent of the cases. That's in 20% of the cases. I mean, if my friend's parent dies,
That's
and
grief. That's not fucking depression.
yeah,
You have a core misunderstanding of what depression is. Being
I mean,
sad
it's
is
not.
not depression. Experiencing
Yeah,
grief is not depression.
I gave a wrong example actually. That's a one-time event. But let's say someone doesn't have a good job and they don't do physical activity and stuff like that. They sleep a lot until late and stuff like that,
What you're
and
all
they don't
talking
really
about are
feel good.
symptoms of depression in the first place.
No, the symptoms do help in perpetuating depression. It's not just like you
Yes,
magically have
but what
depression
you're
and
talking
you
about
have
is
these symptoms.
most people who have depression. Um, it's not. It doesn't have to do with how they act, right? Most people who have depression, actual depression, not just they feel sad and they call themselves depressed, right? It is a diagnosable mental disorder, right? It is not I feel sad. Okay? People who actually have depression, right? They need a
Right.
variety of treatments in order to function as a normal member of society, right? So the idea that they sleep too much, that they maybe don't eat, maybe don't exercise, these are all symptoms because they cannot function as a normal person in society due to their depression.
Yeah, and you diagnose a disease by its symptoms, right? I mean, that is how you diagnose a disease.
Yes,
You look at
but
the symptoms and say,
it is not just that is what I'm saying. What I'm saying is it's not just I feel sad. Okay. It is something that is much more serious than that, and sadness is not depression. There's a reason there's two different
yeah, yeah,
words
I
for those.
agree. I agree. That was a wrong example actually, because that's a one-time event, okay, for 3 months, 6 months, whatever, you might feel, low energy or whatever, sad or whatever. But you get out of it. But I want to give an example of, let's say, a person who doesn't have that much, who has felt their ambition go out, and who doesn't feel joy at the things that they used to do. I mean, that is depression, right? Like they really like playing a game, and now they don't like playing games, they don't like talking to people.
Right.
Like, I
So
mean,
is
that is
that good?
depression.
Is people
I
having
mean, that's
depression good?
obviously, um I mean, it's necessary for our survival.
Do
We
you
wouldn't
think it
have
is
depression
good?
if it wasn't.
Do you think it is good
What
for
do you
people to
mean
have
by good?
depression?
Define good.
In
Define
the
good.
same way that you're trying to insinuate that it's good that people act on their pedophilia, that you think that is going to happen, right? That is what you're describing happening. Do you think that it's good that people have depression? Because if you think that for yourself, that it's good, then I can slightly understand your point, but your point is still not applicable to the entirety of society.
I mean, it's obviously, if you have depression, you are doing something wrong, and you need to look at your life, and you need to fix things. That is what I feel. I mean, it doesn't, it's not good as in, like a chocolate cake is good. A chocolate cake, it's good, but it's not. Um, it, I mean, depression is sort of necessary. That's what I'm saying.
What
I
do you
don't
think it's
want to call it
necessary
good.
for?
Good is the wrong
What do you
term.
think it's necessary? Do you think that pedophilia is then necessary because it's quote unquote natural? Is it necessary?
I mean, it's definitely natural, and I mean, human beings have these variations, right? I mean, that is what we are. I mean, we have different variations of things. Like, that is what evolution is. The best variation wins. So it's definitely a natural thing.
Yes, but does that make it necessary for society in any way? Or does that make it good in any way? Natural doesn't mean
I
good or
mean, till now it
necessary.
hasn't been
Cancer
good.
is also
Till
natural, but that doesn't make it good or necessary for society.
Yeah, I mean, we have so about pedophilia. So over thousands of years, we have decided that it's not good because no, I don't think any major culture right now is okay with pedophilia. like proper pedophilia, like a guy
Right.
going, like not a guy going out with a 16-year-old, but a guy going out with a like a 12-year-old. That's proper pedophilia.
Right. So it's natural and it happens and it has always happened, but that doesn't make it good. What makes you think
Yeah.
that that would change?
Mm,
Do you
I
have
think
any
it
evidence
it might
supporting
change.
that changing?
Uh, I mean, can you explain that again? I mean, what do you mean change? Just,
That the people currently do not think other
hmm.
people acting on pedophilia is good. People, it is a general consensus, unless you're talking to pedophiles, that acting on pedophilia is a bad thing to do. What makes you
Yeah,
think that
sure.
that will change? What evidence do you have that that will change?
Because they normalize divorce, which could be a good thing, fine. It's a positive thing, but it did result in more divorce. I mean, there are positive and negative aspects of more divorce.
So there's
So,
so many levels to this. First of
and
all,
there's and even
first
gay
of all,
marriage. That's also another example that, do you normalize gay marriage,
gay marriage
you're
doesn't do
going to
any
have a lot
physical
more gay
harm to
marriage.
anyone. Gay marriage doesn't do any
Yeah, yeah.
physical harm to anyone. Divorce does not do any physical harm to someone. The reason I used domestic violence in that example earlier is because it does physical harm to someone, so it is directly equatable to pedophilia, acting on pedophilia. It's a very simple concept that physical harm reduction is what we're talking about. And there is no evidence that continuing to not allow pedophilic people to get treatment will reduce harm in any way. Rather, it borderline increases harm because people who could be getting treatment are stigmatized against it and then they don't get treatment and then they can act on their feelings.
They don't act. That's the thing. If they get stigmatized about it, they don't act on it. That's the thing.
That is not true. That is just straight
I,
up
I I mean,
not
some,
true.
I mean, some people will try to find some kid, who's sort of isolated, and they will try to manipulate him or whatever for that thing. But in majority of cases, they don't act on it because it is stigmatized. That's the thing.
Okay,
I
okay.
mean,
Are you talking
I
about
mean, I
the
mean, if
action?
divorce,
Are you talking about the action or their
the
feelings?
action, the action.
Right? Yes, no one wants to change that. No one is pushing to change that. We are pushing to destigmatize the feelings so that people can go and get treatment. No one is trying to destigmatize or lessen the criminal sentences for actual acting on pedophilia. No one is
So,
trying to do that.
not right now, but in 5 to 7 years, probably they might.
That's
Probably.
such a
I don't know.
fucking
I
no,
feel that
dude.
they
That is
might.
not a valid argument. Your fucking slippery slope fallacy is not a valid argument.
I mean, it is.
And just because
I mean,
so you said that like
definitely
half
is.
of slippery slope fallacies come true. That is just inaccurate. But even if it was half, you would only have a 50% chance of being right here, and I have actual data supporting me, so I have more than a 50% chance of being right here.
I mean, look, I feel that it will result in it being more socially acceptable to be a pedophile. That's
Right? You feel that. That's
that.
at the core of this is you feel that, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I
Rather
mean, you
rather
also
than
feel. I mean,
rather than rather
it's
than
not. You are
thinking about your
also
feelings,
some machine.
rather wait, rather than thinking about your feelings, let's think about the reality of the situation. Right? Facts over feelings, remember?
Yeah, facts over feeling, sure, but you also feel. I mean, you also don't have the perfect data.
My data shows that treatment for pedophiles allows them to have a better chance of not acting on their desires, and also that the destigmatization of any mental illness, including pedophilia, does also increase the amount of people that go and seek treatment for that thing. And thus, the lower amount of people that actually act on their urges.
So if
There is no evidence suggesting that just because people think it's okay, which they wouldn't in the first place, just because people think it's okay to act on pedophilia, that more pedophiles, or
it's
there's
it's
no
not okay,
evidence.
it's understandable. It's understandable. That's the thing.
No,
Okay,
that's
I
not
can
what we're
understand
trying.
why that guy.
That's not what any of this is about, right? We're talking about the feelings being natural not even necessarily understandable to the general public. We're talking about these feelings exist and they happen and you can't control it, but what you can do is go get treatment for them. That is all it is. It is saying you should get treatment for this disease. The disease that is
Okay,
pedophilia.
how many people, how much percentage of people do you think can be treated? Of,
What percent?
some, like out
I
of
would have to
100
look into
pedophiles,
that
how
more.
many would be?
I would have to look into that more, but any percentage is better than no percentage, right? It's better than no one seeking
So
treatment.
I mean, sure, it's better for those specific people, but it will definitely result in there being more pedophiles. I mean, it will definitely result in there eventually being less punishments for it, and it will
That's just
change
not
that
how this
equation.
works.
See, so
You
so
have
about
not, there
so
is nothing you
I
can point to in regards to a mental illness, right? Or not even mental illness, but there is nothing you can point to in regards to a violent action that is just deemed okay by society.
so again I'll go look at I'll give you the example of divorce. You know, you
I said
reduce
a
the stigma
violent
around it.
action because that's what it is. We're talking about a violent action. All
So
right.
give me an
Divorce is
example of
different
a
because
violent.
divorce. Give you an example of a violent action: murder, rape, assault,
So those
battery.
things are less acceptable now than before. I mean, rape is definitely less acceptable now than before. I mean, you don't blame the victim now. You obviously blame the rapist now and not the victim. So, I mean, there are,
Yes, and you know what else there is? Domestic violence. Also, we can go with. There is also
yeah,
specifically for rapists and domestic violence abusers. There are specific areas of mental health that treat these people that essentially fix their fucked up programming that made them want to do this in the first place. And that is heavily
so,
pushed now, and it's increasing.
so is there more acceptance for domestic violence or less, comparatively
There is more
speaking, to before?
understanding, right? That's why we have the treatments available now that we never had before. There's more understanding that this happens. It's not a good thing, but this happens, and just punishing someone for it doesn't actually fix the core of the issue.
I mean, there is definitely less acceptance of domestic violence. I mean, I don't know what you're talking about. I
There
mean,
is less acceptance of the action. You're proving my point.
I
There
feel
is
you're
less
proving mine. I
acceptance
mean,
of the action. There is more acceptance, and this can be shown through the increasing amount of treatments available. That the feeling, right, is something that can receive treatment. The actions are no less okay. They are less okay than they have been historically. While we
uh,
simultaneously have more treatment available for people who want to domestic violence people.
so there is less acceptance of both the things, the action
No, there is more
of
acceptance. There is more acceptance from a broad scale of why of that this is something that some people feel and it's something that needs to be treated.
so
And there is
have
less
you been
acceptance of the actions.
so do you think there is more domestic violence in Saudi Arabia or in India or in the USA? Okay, let's forget about India. In Saudi Arabia or in the USA?
In Saudi Arabia, also, they probably do not have treatments for domestic violence. They also don't have things like
They don't have
divorce.
treatments. It's an accepted thing that if you are a woman, then you
That's
are
not what I'm meaning
I
by
mean
accepted.
you are
What I'm meaning
property
by accepted is
in
understanding the feelings that lead to the action.
I mean
That is what I mean.
if a man abuses his wife in Saudi Arabia, it's not really it's sort of quote unquote accepted, right? I mean that's how it is. It's definitely more accepted over there, domestic violence, than in the USA. You're talking about it in a completely reverse fashion. I mean, it's definitely not acceptable to
Right, so I'm talking
to
about
be
pedophilia in the United States. So why are we talking about Saudi Arabia, first of all?
no, because you are using a wrong analogy. I mean, you're talking about the thing, but in reverse.
I'm talking about
You're
domestic
saying
violence
it's more
in
acceptable.
no. I am talking currently about domestic violence in the United States and the reactions and feelings towards it.
So it's less acceptable. It's not more acceptable
The
about the
actions, the
feeling of a
actions.
man. being in
Bro,
control or
do you
whatever.
understand the difference between actions and feelings? Do you understand that, like at a
Do
base level?
you? Do you? I mean,
Yes.
because
No, no, no. Dude, what is an action? Because apparently we gotta bring this all the way
no,
back. What is an action?
I mean, the an action is a thing you do. I mean,
Okay, and what is a feeling?
a feeling is, I guess, something that you want to do in this case. I
Sure,
mean,
sure. So an action is something that you do. The action would be the committing of domestic violence or the committing of pedophilia, right? The feeling
so
is
one
the
one thing, one
wait.
second, one second.
No, no,
No,
wait.
no, one second,
My
one second, one
stream.
second. So
My
the
stream. Let me
action.
finish. Let me finish my statement.
Okay, you
Okay.
finished then.
So the action is the domestic violence assault or the pedophilia action, right? The feeling is the desire to do these things. Okay.
It's the feeling. So
And by
I'll elaborate
accepted,
on that. The feeling is not the desire to do domestic violence. The feeling is the desire to be in sort of in sort of quote unquote control, to to
so
own your woman or whatever.
if
That's
you
the
actually had
feeling.
let me finish what I was saying, then you would actually see me say that. So where I was going was that the understanding is not a saying that this is good. The understanding is an understanding of why people have these feelings and how to essentially make the feelings go away, right? So domestic violence, yeah, power. I would say pedophilia a lot of the time also has an aspect of power. Same thing as rape has a huge aspect of power involved, right? But it's an understanding of why these feelings arise, and that leads you to be able to treat it rather than just say, suck it up and don't act on it, because that simply does not work.
I mean, so there is more punishment for domestic violence now than before. I mean, before it was just the norm, right? I mean, if you were a woman, you didn't really have that many options. But now it's definitely more punished. It is
Yeah,
more punished now than before,
yeah, and
right?
there's treatments for it as well.
So there is no quote unquote treatment. I mean, before it wasn't really not even not treated or punished. Now it's sort of punished.
There is
I'm
a
not talking about
treatment.
the treatment. I'm
You
talking
are
about the
simply
punishment.
misinformed, bro. There are therapy therapy based treatments, and sometimes they involve medication, that like mental health medication. But there are therapy
Yeah,
based
but the main
treatments
thing,
for domestic violence that reduce the likelihood that someone will commit domestic violence again,
yeah,
and
but
is
the main thing is
often
the punishment. It's not the treatment. The main reason it's the main thing is the punishment. It's not the treatment. That's not the main thing.
and no one's saying the punishment should go away for pedophilia. We're saying that the
Yeah, they
treatment
will.
should
I
be
mean,
there, and for people to be able to access the treatment, the stigma needs to lessen.
so yeah, I want to say one thing about the domestic violence thing. So it is less acceptable, right, to do the action to
Yes,
do domestic violence, and it's also less acceptable to have the feeling that that you own your women and you can do whatever, right,
I'm not saying
in the
acceptable.
US.
I'm not saying acceptable when it comes to feelings. I'm saying understood in terms of a way in which we can see why these thoughts come about, and we can try to figure out how to stop these
But it is
thoughts
less
from coming about.
acceptable, right? It is less acceptable,
I'm
right?
not saying that it should be
The
acceptable to have
No, no, no.
pedophilic.
It's fine. I'm not making a moral judgment about anything.
No, I'm not saying.
I'm just saying
You
in
are completely
absolute terms.
misunderstanding my point on pedophilia. That's what I'm trying to get at. I'm not saying that it should be morally okay to be a pedophile. What I'm saying is that the stigma surrounding pedophiles seeking treatment should be lessened. Because if they seek treatment,
Um,
they are less likely to offend.
One second. Let's just complete that domestic violence thing. So, I mean, it's definitely less acceptable to be domestically violent, and it's definitely less acceptable to have this, to have this for the man to have this, feeling of okay, I own my woman, right?
You're
I mean,
conflating
it's less
acceptable and
acceptable.
understood. You're conflating acceptable and understood,
I'm
buddy.
not talking about understood right now. It's definitely less acceptable, right?
Okay? You're not making any point against my points then. If you're talking about
Yeah.
acceptability,
So
you're
no, no,
not
I
making a
am
point
making.
that has anything to do with mine.
So I am talking. I think acceptability is the main point. I mean, it is less acceptable to be to be domestically violent right now.
I
So
am not
if it
talking about
is,
making anything acceptable. That's not what I'm saying. So that's why I'm saying that you're not arguing against anyone right now. I'm not saying to make something acceptable. That is not what I'm saying.
I found I found mainly a major disagreement. Usually, when two people disagree, it's usually one single thing about, that blossoms into a thing. It's usually like one thing. For me, what I feel is the disagreement is that we have a different understanding of how it will work, in the sense that according to you, the people more pedophiles will be treated, and there will be less pedophiles out there. For you, it's that I mean it's that thought process. For me, the
Yes,
thought
less
process
active
is that,
pedophiles.
and for me, the thought process is that you are reducing the stigma around it. And so because of that, sure, some people might be treated, but majority of the cases, people will not people will not be able to be treated. And when they act, and when they do act on it, since it is more understandable, and that goes hand in hand with acceptance. If you understand something, then you can accept it eventually.
We understand.
So
No. Wait. I'm just gonna give you one more example of something that we understand but we do not accept. Right? Aside from domestic violence, we can talk about psychopathy. Okay, we understand psychopathy. It doesn't mean that we accept it. It doesn't mean that we accept the actions that arise from it.
hmm, but there is no punishment for, like, you don't put psychopaths unless they commit crimes. You don't
So
put
unless they
them in
commit the
prison, right?
action, right? It's the same exact thing we're talking about
Hmm.
here. Unless they commit the action, which generally would be some form of heinous violent crime, right? So if they commit the
Hmm.
action, we punish them. If they don't, we tend to try to treat them. Because that is all that you can
Again,
do. It doesn't mean that we create more pedophiles by saying that we can treat them. It means that we're trying to reduce the amount of acting on that pedophiles do.
see, so Twitter, banned gays against groomers. There's this group called Gays Against Groomers. So, why would they ban them? Why is it wrong to be a gay against, groomers? They banned them or something like that. They suspended their account, something like that. There
Just
is
based on the
definitely a
name, I'm
possibility.
guessing that's because they were probably spewing transphobic things, and that would be until recently, maybe still, against the Twitter TOS. So that would be why they got banned.
Yeah, again, that's my point. I
It's
don't
not
feel
about
like probably they
groomers.
are saying transphobic
It's about
things.
calling drag queens and trans people groomers. That's why they got banned, not because they were talking about groomers. So they were calling these people who are not groomers.
Yeah, but there are groomers, right? There are groomers. I have seen the events in America. You have
Yes, that
literally
exists.
strippers.
No one. Okay, that is not a groomer, bro. Do you know what
That
a
is
groomer
definitely a
is?
groomer.
Do you know what a groomer
I,
is?
I'm, so yeah, we are using different definitions actually. So for me, a groomer is someone who is pushing pushing the idea of sex towards minors.
Great. That's
Doesn't
basically what
have to be that
that
they are.
that's basically what a groomer is. What minor goes into a strip club? I don't know how it's like in India, but in the United States, that's not allowed.
No, see, I have seen those. You will be very very shocked if you see those videos of. I have literally seen strippers who are trans, so trans strippers who are like stripping, and it's not completely stripping, but it's like a small dot on their breasts or tits or whatever. It's like a small covering on the tits, and it's like and it's like I can't even describe, man. Like it's like literally a 7-year old, and they are literally stripping in front of that 7-year old. I mean, not going naked, but it's definitely stripping.
Can you send me the video?
Yeah,
And
sure.
I'll
I'll
watch it
find it and
together.
send it to you. And those are not like one case. Like I have seen 3 or 4 examples. I was completely shocked. Like
Do you see any
what is
No,
happening
no, no.
in the
Three or
United
four
States?
examples is not in. Three or four or
Yeah,
one example
I
is
get it.
not indicative of a greater trend in society.
Yeah, I understand that. But even 3 or 4 examples. I mean, like I mean, just 3 or 4 examples is existing is a big deal. I mean, like that
Yeah,
thing
no one's
existing is
saying
like a
I'm
big
not
deal to
saying that
me.
that's good. I'm saying that's not indicative of drag queens, or strippers, or any group that those people might belong to. It is indicative of them as individuals.
I mean, if people, started digging up dead people and started eating them, and so, I mean, that would be huge, right? If there's like 4 to 5 cases of people digging up dead
But
people and
does
and
that mean
eating them.
society is turning cannibalistic? No. Or does that mean that that group of people is cannibalistic, like the broader group?
Yeah,
So if
yeah, but still,
what are you saying? Yes, like that
yeah,
does
yeah,
make the
but
entire group.
no, I mean, it does. I mean, if there's no like outrage about it, or there's no response to it. I mean, there is an outrage about it, I guess. Not in the left wing, in the right wing, there is an outrage about it. But I mean, yeah, it's weird to me that there is no outrage in like 50% of the population. Definitely, that there is only 50% of the population who
Again,
feels that this is
I'd
an
have to look
outrage.
at the specific videos that you're talking about, but I've definitely seen
Yeah,
a
I'll
lot of
share.
leftists coming out and talking about how specific instances are bad, but that doesn't make the vast majority of cases bad. Right?
Sure, maybe 30%.
Not all drag is stripping. Not all drag is sexual. Because there's
So,
also
I
such
mean, the
thing as
only
boudoir
reason.
art, which children for a long time have been able to go to. Right? I went to a
No,
show. I went to
okay.
a show. It was technically a comedy show, I believe, with my parents when I was like 10. And at one point, yes, they had like boudoir art, which is kind of like scandalous dancing, I guess you could say. But it's not sexual in nature; it's art in nature. This has always been allowed.
Hmm. Yeah, it's sort of risque stuff that's always been allowed. But I mean, yeah, but I mean, if
Is
we
it different because the drag queen, was born a man and dressing as a woman? What makes this situation
no,
different than that?
no, the difference was that she was in like literally like a um like an outfit that you would have sex with. I mean, if your partner was wearing that, it would probably be to have sex
That's what
with them.
boudoir art is as
It's
well.
Yeah, and she was wearing that and doing a dance or a show in front of literally kids.
That's already allowed.
I mean, there were
Whether or not it's a
adults.
drag queen, if it's boudoir art, it's already allowed. It's art.
Yeah, okay, that so
It has
so
nothing to
I
do
don't
with
know
her being a
how
drag queen.
expressive that kind of art is, but yeah, it definitely shouldn't be allowed. I mean, come
Right,
on,
you can think that, but it
you
has
can't
nothing to do with
strip.
this person being a drag queen. It has nothing to do with the issue. Also, how the fuck did we get onto drag queens when we were talking about how pedophilia is not acceptable? Pedophilia is
Yeah,
not what drag queens are doing.
yeah, yeah. I guess not. Definitely only a small minority, like 10% maybe, or 20%, maybe 10 to 20%. That's how it usually works. I mean,
Of
it's
what?
usually,
Drag queens are pedophiles? Is that what you're saying?
yeah. Or
Do you
they
have
are
any
okay with it. I'm not saying that they engage in it, but they are okay with it, or fine, whatever.
What makes you think that? Do you have anything
I mean,
supporting
I mean,
that? Or are you just making an assumption
it's just,
pulled out of your ass yet
it's just,
again?
it's. Do you know the Pareto's principle?
What?
Pareto, Pareto's principle, the 80-20 rule.
The 80/20 rule? What? That like
That
80% of
80%,
people. What are
that
you
that
gonna say?
that, that the world is divided into 80-20s. So 20% of the people have 80% of the wealth, 20% of your employees do 80% of the work. In an industry, 20% of the companies have 80% of the market share. Like the world is divided, is not 50-50, it's divided 80-20. Like it can be 70-30, it can be 90-10, but it's that kind of division. It's an 80-20
Pedophilia
kind of
is
division,
not
basically.
80/20.
It's probably 80-20. I mean, everything is 80-20.
Everything that we've created, maybe.
No, no, that is how it stabilizes. I mean, Pareto's principle, it's a thing. I mean, if you ask any business, uh,
The prevalence of pedophilia in the general population is not known, but is estimated to be lower than 5% among adult men. Less is known about the prevalence of pedophilia in women. That doesn't sound like 20% to me.
no, I'm not saying 20% of people are pedophiles. I mean, I'm not saying that. It's obviously lesser, much lesser. Probably not even 5%, maybe like 2%,
So,
like 1%
so you
maybe.
think that what 20% of people support pedophiles are okay with pedophilia?
Mm. No, I feel that 20% of the trans community is okay with pedophilia, probably. Yeah.
So, why would that be specifically the trans community? Why wouldn't that apply to the
Because they
regular
are more
population?
because they are more open to accepting, I mean, different points of view on sex and more sort of
Trans.
risque or
So you do understand that
whatever.
being transgender has nothing to do with sex, like intercourse sex, right? You understand that, right?
So yeah, that is also a thing. I don't think so. I think trans people are just people with a fetish. I mean, it's
It has
autogynephilia
absolutely
for
nothing to do
men.
with sex. You do realize that, right?
So yeah, this is something else that is there. I mean, let's forget about the pedophilia thing. I mean, whatever.
Let's no let's go back to first of all the definition of transgender being you don't identify with the sex you were assigned at birth. And let's go back to gender dysphoria,
Yeah,
which
that's
is the
bullshit, I think. First of all, there is no difference between gender and sex. I mean, if you are a
great,
man,
but
it's in every cell of your body. I mean, it's in your bones, it's in your tissue structure, it's in your, I mean, it's in the vast majority of your body. There's a difference. If you were a woman, your body would be completely different, and 70 to 80% of your body would be completely different. Even your brain would be different. Even your stomach would be. I don't know about the stomach and stuff, but I mean, your brain would be different. Your bones would be different. Like the so yeah,
so what you're talking about is normal people, right?
mm,
Being transgender is the identity that
it's
relates
just
to having the mental illness that is gender dysphoria, right?
it's just a
And that is
sexual
a mental
fetish.
illness, so
That's I think.
obviously it is not the same thing as what the norm is, because that's why it's called a mental illness, not a fucking normal thing, right?
Yeah,
That
it's
that's
no longer a mental illness.
that I mean, it quite literally. Some people will argue that. I heavily disagree with that, but it quite literally, gender dysphoria is a mental illness by definition.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, society has moved on, I guess, for good or for bad, whatever. But I mean, I don't think that there is a difference between gender and sex. Hello?
Great, but that
Yeah.
am I still here? Yeah. Great, but
Yeah.
that still doesn't have anything to
Your pick is
do
not.
with that still doesn't make being transgender have anything to do with sex. Last I checked,
It's a sexual.
actually,
Just one thing. Just one thing. Your pick is not showing. I mean, on stream,
yeah, I know,
the
I just
video
saw
is
that.
not showing.
Give me 2 seconds.
Yeah,
Let's
sure.
see what happened. Oh. All right, my phone is my camera, and my phone died. So that's not gonna work. Um, I'm gonna try to wrap this up a little bit. So first of all, I'm going to say that being transgender has nothing to do with sex. There is actually a higher percentage of people who are transgender that are abstinent, whether it be by choice or by circumstance. There's a higher percentage of transgender people who are abstinent than the general population. All right, that would indicate that it's not about sex, for one.
I mean,
Second of
that would
all,
indicate that it is about sex. I mean, that it is about something going wrong about sex,
what would it indicate going wrong about
having
sex?
sex, because
What would
they're
it?
abstinent, right? I mean, you don't
Because
go
they're not
abstinent
comfortable
unless
with their
there's something.
bodies. Among other things, among other showings of uncomfort relating to their bodies, that is one of the showings. If this was a fetish, wouldn't they be having sex as be having more sex as the gender that they identify as because that's their fucking fetish or something?
I mean, it's complicated to explain, but I mean,
What do you?
I
No, no,
don't
no.
feel
You're
that
you're calling it a fetish. What is the fetish?
fetish is to fantasize about yourself as the other gender.
So is the fetish not
And you
sexual?
and then you make your identity about it.
So is the fetish not sexual?
The fetish is sexual, yes. I mean, it's fantasizing about yourself as the
I
other
fantasize
gender.
about myself being rich. Is that sexual?
No, because it's not about sex, right?
Right. Neither is being transgender. It's not about
No,
sex.
it
It's
is.
about your own body and how you look and how you identify and present. That is not sex.
I mean, the only so one of the main reasons, I'll not say the only reason, but probably one of the main reasons to identify as another gender would be for sex, right? To of the opposite gender.
If they're having lower rates of sex, how would that indicate a fetish?
Because they don't want to have sex as a man, right? They want to have sex as a woman, or they want to have sex as a man if it's the
Great, so they
opposite case.
transition and then they have lower rates of sex.
Look, I mean, so obviously there's something wrong with sex going with them, right? Whether naturally or whatever. Most likely, probably naturally only, I feel.
Okay, look, I'm gonna wrap this up because my camera died. But what I have to say, right, is that you have absolutely no evidence supporting you, and you've been pulling shit out of your ass this entire time based on your own feelings. When you and I both subscribe to the party that generally says facts over feelings. Okay, you are inherently going against your
I mean,
own.
you have also told me your feelings, but you have presented it as a fact.
No, I have
I'm
told you
just
actual facts.
mm,
I have told you verifiable facts. You have told me absolutely no verifiable facts. And when I asked you where that source came from, whenever you said a fact, you said, "Oh, I don't have a source. I just thought of
not
that."
a, it's not like some it's not one source. Like I mean, it's an understanding of the world based on a lot of things. I mean, it's
You
not just
do
like
not
one
have an
source that
understanding of the world,
you
sir.
do a Google search,
Sir.
and then you get that one source. Okay,
Oh,
this proves
great,
that thing.
Google.
I mean,
No
it's
one
not that
uses Google
simple.
for actual research. Studies are not on Google. All right? You use databases, you use Google
That
Scholar
was
if you
just an
have nothing
example. I
else.
mean,
But
that's just an
what I'm
example. I
saying, what
mean,
I'm saying is that I have evidence, you have absolutely none to support your point. So you can come back another time if you have actual evidence supporting your point. But until then, there is no conversation to be had because you're just talking out of
I
your ass.
literally, I literally have evidence in the form of observable reality.
Observable
I mean,
reality.
you
You mean
normalize
your
divorce,
personal
there's more divorce.
experience?
Look. You normalize divorce, there's more divorce in general.
Divorce
The
is not a
divorce rate is
violent
increasing.
action committed against someone. Divorce is not inherently bad. A violent action against someone is inherently bad.
You
Dude,
normalize gay
I
marriage, there's more gay marriage. It's
same
fine.
thing.
That's a
There is
positive
there
thing.
is
But
no
you
harm to
normalize
someone involved in
pedophilia,
that.
there's gonna
There is
be
absolutely no harm to someone involved in that. We're talking about situations that create harm to an individual, like physical harm to an individual. Divorce and gay marriage have absolutely nothing to do with that, and there's no reason to continue to bring it up.
you destigmatize suicide and medically assisted suicide, not just suicide, but also people helping you to commit suicide.
Medically assisted
There's gonna
suicide
be
exi-
more medically
No, no, no.
assisted suicide.
Medically assisted suicide um, already existed and was becoming more and more prevalent prior to the destigmatization of suicide.
Yeah, it was just people turning off the life support, right? For old people. I mean, the doctor would come in and say that okay, whatever. it's going to cost this much, and etc., whatever. I mean, it used to happen, but it wasn't like an official thing that you could do, right?
It was an official thing. At right about the
I
same
mean, not
time,
5 years ago,
what?
not 5 or 7 years ago, not seven
In
years ago.
Canada, no, but in a lot of other places and in states in the United States, yes, it was. The Netherlands has had it for what, like 20 years?
Yeah, but there is more acceptance of that now. I mean, it's not.
Dude, that doesn't make anyone think that the action is good. Acceptance or understanding does not mean good. I'm over this conversation because we're just constantly going in circles and you have a lack of actual information or knowledge on the topic. Have a good night.